Hi, this is Stephen Brower from Raton Valley Community College. This is for Computer Literacy Summer 2017, and this doesn't tie with the book, but this is meant to be a demo of some more advanced formulas in Excel. So I have here a mock gradebook, and on one of the tabs, instead of using attendance, I'm using presence for an online course. I have the actual grades themselves. And which I'll get to in a moment. I have what I use for calculating the forum, and what I'm going to step through here is well, let's jump right into the forum. Now, forum 1 has been calculated, forum 2 hasn't, and because I want to step through it. But you know, the way that I do the forums for this course is first I look at the posting that you're done. Now, for this demo here, I'm just making the assumption that there wouldn't be a partial posting. It's all or nothing. And so what I would just be entering, in a sense, I would just enter in whether there is a posting, and then I would enter in how many other postings have been read. Now, this post score here, well, if there is a posting, it's 80. If there isn't, it's 0. And so what I'll step to on the other sheet is I actually will get into the if statement that's being used to calculate this. Now for the read score, although this is the number that different people have read, what I've been doing is I've been using a different number, saying that I'm using this as sort of the benchmark. So the idea, if someone had read 12 or more, then they get the full 20 points. If they haven't, then what I've been doing is prorating it. And so then I'll have, it's a little more complicated function, but it actually has an absolute cell reference to the formula that I'm using here. Okay, so this is what I want to build, and I'm going to do it in this form on chapter 2 here. So the post score. So I'm going to use the if function. And the nice thing about Excel is that it will give you this sort of visual clue as to what you should be entering. So the first thing is the logical test. Well, what I want to do is I'm hitting the arrow key to the left. And so if this is y, then I'm going to use, so the value of true. So if they did do a post y, the value is 80. Otherwise, the value is 0. And so let me just go and put this in. And just to test, by the way, if I actually use n, it goes back to 0, y, it goes back to 80. So what I can do is I can now take this formula that I have done, and I can copy it all the way down to everyone. So right now, Costello is the only one that has a 0 because he hasn't done a post yet. Now the read score. So although this is what everyone read, so Larry has been up to date, and Abbott is close. Well, you know, lagging a little bit. Now in this one over here, I did use 12 as the number. And why don't I just start off and do the same thing? Let me just use 12 here as if this is going to be the magic number, and we'll see what happens when I go back and I change it. Okay, so what I want to do here in terms of the read score, well, if someone's score, so if someone's score is greater than or equal to, I'm sorry, I'm not saying the score, if the number of posts that someone has read is greater than or equal to the one I'm using for the formula. Now I'm going to deliberately make a mistake, and you'll see in a second. Then I'm going to use 20, and if not, then I want to prorate that 20. So then what I can do is say, okay, take their value, divide it by the value that's here, and multiply that by 20. So that would be the prorated value. Now the mistake that I made is I didn't make the reference to this part right here an absolute one. It's a relative reference. So that C9 that's being used, that's the one that, right, this is a relative reference. So let me just accept this. And just for giggles and grins, so if I go and change this to 3, the score is 5, 0, the read score is 0. If I do 6, it's half of that, so it's 10. 12, that they got it, and I've already forgotten what it had begun with, but let's just stick 21 in there. It's what it had begun with. Now, I don't have the absolute cell reference, but when I copy this down, then, well, what's happening on each of these here, it's because of the relative cell reference, and let me just go and hit F2, it's actually doing the comparison here. So if this greater than or equal, well, actually happens to be 0 equals 0, and so it's using 20. And then if I look at this one right here, because of that relative cell reference, when it was copied down to these other rows, it's that it was adjusting that C9. It wasn't keeping it fixed. Okay, so let's get rid of these, and let's fix this here. And so the fix, now what I in my mind use is I think of the $sign as being don't change. So when you copy the formula, don't change the column, don't change the row. So we're going to absolutely refer to C9. And there are instances where you'd want to not change one but change the other. And for right now, for this intro, first absolute cell reference, let's just go with the having it fixed. So what this will mean is when I copy this formula down to row 3 for Costello, the C2 is going to change to C3. So the C2 is going to change to C3. So this way I'll be looking at Costello's score, but it's going to not change the C9. Okay, so now when I take this formula and copy it down, well, I'll have to do formatting in a second, but now when I take the formula and copy it down, so we see Costello is 0, Champ is not that much, Mo is not that much, but at least now I have, in terms of this, the if statement, I'm absolutely referring to this value. Suppose I decide I want 10 to be the value that's used. So if I change this to 10, well, now Mo has a score. Well, I'll do the formatting somewhere else. We saw formatting in the prior video. But the idea is I can change, if I want to, lower the number. We have more 20s. I mean, it's silly if I make it 0, it would. But if I make it, 22, then only one person has it. Let me just put it back at 10, just for simplicity. Okay, so this is what I'm using for calculating what the foreign score is. If I look back over here in the gradebook, what I want to do, since I'm using a separate sheet for the forum, I want to just then copy the total that I have there. So what I'm going to do is, nice thing about Excel, we can use the point and click in terms of our formulas. So I hit the equal sign, which puts me in formula mode, and I'm going to say, okay, let's take the total for Abbott and hit enter. So now if we look back at what's here, the single quotes that are around that forum chapter 2, that's referring to the sheet. So it's saying that's the sheet, and the exclamation point is the separator between the sheet and the cell reference, and so it's cell F2 in the forum chapter 2 sheet. Since I have a relative cell reference for the F2, if I take this formula and copy it down, now I have the calculations that I've been calculated for all the other students as well. The comma format is the one that I was using, and by default the comma format does make zeros look at the little tick marks here, and there is a way to use a custom format so the 0 actually comes up. What I sometimes, just because it's not that often, have a 0, I might just go and override it, but I'm just going to leave the 0 here as is. But what I mean is, if I go and clear the format, okay, it does show the 0. If I undo that, it's putting the tick mark there. Okay, so for the forum, I did the if, I did this, and I did the grade. Okay. Okay, so let me switch and talk about presents. No, not gifts. I'm meaning is someone here. So what I do is I say, okay, if someone has submitted something, or if there's a grade for what was due that week, then I consider them as being present. Well, first let me just come up with what that total is. So in other words, if I just want to get the total of, so let's say for the week of 7/10, it's the forum, plus it's the end of chapter 2 quiz, plus it's the, let's just say it was the lab 2 and the lab 3. And so what I just did right here, I'm just going to take a look at it, is I'm adding then the score, so on the forum, the quiz, and 2 of the labs. Well, what I did here, just as more like a baby step, is I just want to make sure that the calculation is working. And so one thing we see at a glance, that Costello, there is no grade for Costello because he has a 0 here, 0 here, 0 on each of those, so he's not he won't be considered present. But I don't want to use this value. I want to use a yes or a no. So what I can do is put an if statement around what I just put in. In other words, I can go in and say, okay, well, if, and I'm just going to put an extra set of parentheses just to be redundant, if this here is greater than 0, then someone is here. If not, someone is not here. And so I've modified the if statement. So if the sum of those things is greater than 0, then they've done at least something. And so they're here, and if not, they're not here. And so if I take this and bring it all the way down, so now everyone else but Costello is here. Okay, let me jump. What I'm going to do, let's just do it this way. Suppose, let's just pretend that he submitted the resume late, and let's just say I put in here a 70 for that. Remember, I'm saying Lab 2 is part of that second week. If we go back and look at the presents, then he's here. If I undo that 70 and look back at the presents, he's not here. Okay. This column, oh, 2 things. One, this Lab 3 paper, if I hit F2 to go into edit mode, and I'm going to move my cursor here and hit Alt-Enter, then it's one way that I can, using the keyboard, do a wrap in terms of a title. What I use this, until I grade something, I use this as more indicator of what it is I have to grade. And so half means I received something but there's an issue. 1 means I received it and it's good. And what I've been doing in some cases is emailing people saying, hey, you need to resend the file. But if I want to know the total of what I want to grade, well, I can use a COUNTIF. So if I say COUNTIF, and I'll do the open paren, so now we want to do the range. Well, let me come up one, which I'll have to explain this in another video, given the time. So in this range, I want to count, well, if it's 1. And just this piece right here, there's 3 1s. But if I'm considering the half as something I eventually have to grade, I'm going to want to do that as well. And so what I can do is then just do another plus COUNTIF, the range, and if it's 0.5. And so what that, as a visual clue to me, is saying that there are 5 items that are submitted. And many times what I do is I double check that this number matches the number of items waiting in web study. Okay, I may not have enough time to finish the thing that I'm about to do, but what I am going to do is I want to put in averages for these things so far. And so let me insert, and I'll explain why I want to do 2 columns. But if I use this as the average, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to get this done in a minute. I'll pick, let me undo this. I'll pick this up in, well, part 2 of the demo of the Gradebook.